you. So again, welcome. So glad you could join us for this Advocacy 101 Do's and Don'ts. My name is Megan Allen. I'm CEO here at NYCON, and I am very happy to be joined by Vince Marrone, founder and principal of Public Strategies, LLC. He has more than 30 years of experience in public policy, community organizing, and advocacy. He is also a longtime board member on the NYCON board. And I'd like to personally thank Vince for all of his teaching he's given me in the last couple of years on advocacy, especially around New York State Legislature. It has been invaluable, and I'm glad to have him here today to share his expertise. So with that, I will turn it to Vince.
Thank you, Megan. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm gonna spend some time just talking about the legal aspects of lobbying in New York and how to engage in the advocacy role that a lot of nonprofits are involved in. I've been a lobbyist in Albany for about 30 years now. Used to work in the legislature. Worked for a guy named Dick Gottfried, who was the chair of the health committee for about 8 years. And I also was a lobbyist for the state health department for a number of years before I went to work for some private groups, George Soros among them. And since around 2000, I've been working for myself directly. So there's two aspects that I want to talk about. And there's a document that I think got sent around. And I think we're going to also put it on the screen so people can see it. And there's two elements that we're going to focus on when you think about being a nonprofit and being involved in lobbying. A lot of folks that are working in nonprofits, for some reason, think it's illegal for them to lobby. It is not. If it was illegal for people in the nonprofit world to lobby, I wouldn't have any business. And the halls of Albany would be pretty empty because most of the people that I run into in the halls in the Capitol and in the LOB are people that work in nonprofits. But to do that, you have to make a couple of considerations. One is legal. That's the federal law related to your 501c3. And then there are reporting requirements, and that's a state law. And we'll get into both of those, right? So if you're a nonprofit, you're probably a 501c3. And under federal law, there's two ways that the IRS looks at your lobbying. One is direct lobbying, which is basically directly engaging a legislator, governor's office, state agency asking for something. You want money, you want a regulation enacted, or you want the law changed in some way. The other way to get involved is through what's called grassroots lobbying. Grassroots lobbying is more of a public communication. It's sort of a call to action is the way it's referred to. So if you were to, like, say your agency was to buy a billboard about a bill that you like or don't like, and you were going to ask on that billboard for the public to call some number, call your legislator, say you like it, don't like it, whatever your position may be, that is grassroots lobbying. Those are the two things that the federal government, the IRS, would look at when it comes to what a nonprofit does in the area of lobbying. There are some exemptions to that. If your funding is cut, for example, which can happen, obviously, if you're the target of a funding cut, that is not considered lobbying as far as the IRS is concerned. Again, there's two parts here, federal and state. We're looking at federal right now and your tax law eligibility. Self-defense, that's one defense, right? If somebody's cutting your budget, you're allowed to advocate to change that. There's also something called nonpartisan analysis. What is that? So if you were to put out a report on a topic, say, childcare and the need for childcare, as long as that report doesn't say, and the legislature should add $1 million to this, or the law should be changed for XYZ reasons. As long as it's just a nonpartisan thing, you're not engaging in a call to action in any way, and you're experts in that area, that's nonpartisan analysis. That is not a hit on your 501c3. Providing technical assistance is another exemption. And I have clients that have done this. You get a request from the governor's office because you're an expert in some area that they lack, and they want you to come in and help them to develop a new program, something they want to start, a new budget initiative next year, but we don't have an expertise in that. They will make a written request to you to come in and give them advice on it. If you get that written request, that exempts you from the federal rules and how much money you can spend on lobbying. And then there's just discussions of broad social issues, right? Without mentioning legislation at all, just abstract discussions of policy areas, topics that you're expert in. That's not lobbying as far as the IRS is concerned, right? So there is something called a 501H election. If you can scroll down a little bit, there's two different parts to this. And if your agency has not done this, I would strongly encourage that you do that. You should talk to your lawyer and your accountant about this. A 501H election it's a one-page form, and you basically just check a box saying that your agency wants to be evaluated in terms of your 501H, your 501c3, and your lobbying expenditures under what's called 501H, right? And why would you do that? The prime reason to do that is the rules are very clear, and the numbers, the totals that you can spend, is pretty high. So if you look, I'm not going to go into minute detail in this section, but if you look at the bottom lines, if you have an agency of $1.5 million in direct lobbying, you could legally spend $225,000 on direct lobbying, which is a ton of money. It's incredibly rare that a nonprofit would get anywhere near that in terms of what their lobbying expenditures would be. And if you're doing grassroots lobbying, if you had, again, a $1.5 million budget, you could spend over $56,000 on grassroots lobbying. Again, that is a lot of money for a nonprofit of that size. $1 million nonprofit is not a big agency. So that is why you would make a 501H election. The rules are very clear, and the caps on spending are very high. So it really gives you a lot of room to maneuver and really clear rules in how to proceed in terms of your advocacy work. I do want to make clear at the bottom of that line, at the bottom of this page, I should say, there's a note about electoral activities. You are not involved as a nonprofit to get involved in electoral activities. As an individual, you certainly are allowed to do that. Your agency is not. So, like, if you wanted to, support someone for elected office, you're perfectly free to do that on your own. But you can never say my agency supports, so-and-so for assembly or for state senate. That would be a violation of your 501c3, and you could lose your nonprofit status as a result of that. So that is the federal side of this. Let's talk about state lobbying rules. When it comes to state lobbying and what they look at, you're really looking at reporting requirements. It's really based on how much money you spend. The threshold is $5,000 a year. So if you spend more than $5,000 a year lobbying, then you would have to register with the Commission on Ethics and Lobbying. If you have a lobbyist, you don't do that filing. I would do that if I was your lobbyist. You don't do it directly. You would do what's called biannual reports, where every 6 months you would report what I did on your behalf. But if you don't have a lobbyist and you do it yourself, your agency would have to register with the Lobbying Commission. And what is lobbying in New York, right? It's pretty basic and probably obvious to most of you, right? Anything you would do to support or oppose something the legislature or the governor is doing, whether it's a bill, regulation, or funding, all those things are considered lobbying in the eyes of the commission, right? And therefore, that is what they're going to look at. And those are the kind of things that you're going to report on, right? Which officials are covered? Pretty much anybody you would engage with in the course of your business. The legislature for sure, governor, lieutenant governor, controller, heads of different agencies, all the staff that work in different agencies, anybody that you would normally come involved with, pushing for a regulation, a bill, or funding, all those people would be covered by the lobby law. The only entity that's really not covered is the Board of Regents. So if you do any work with the Board of Regents directly, not state ed, but the Board of Regents themselves, the members of the Board of Regents, they're not covered by the lobby law because they're not paid. They're all per diem, basically volunteers that they serve in those roles. You want to scroll down a little bit more? Thank you. And this is a list of exemptions from what the commission thinks is lobbying, right? So again, it's somewhat consistent with the federal rules. If somebody asks for your opinion on something, if you got a letter from a legislator or the governor office saying, we need your expertise on something, we want some information from you, that's not considered lobbying as far as the commission is concerned, right? A lot of the other stuff is arcane. It really would not involve what nonprofits do. The other thing I would mention is any kind of communication where somebody is asking you for factual information. Like a state legislator says, can you tell me, how many homeless kids are in your school district, right? That's a request from them for just facts. That's not considered lobbying. That's not to be reported. All right. There are a number of things that are prohibited under the lobby rules. The two most prominent is you are not allowed to give gifts to elected officials. The rule is basically a cup of coffee. I think what the way the lobby commission looks at it is if it costs $15 or less, then that's okay. If you want to give somebody a plaque or something like that, they don't care about those things, but nothing substantial. You can't give financial gifts or things of value to an elected official or anybody that you're lobbying. The other rule is contingency retainers. So I am not allowed as a lobbyist to accept a contingency, and you're not allowed as a client to offer one to me. Contingency is basically an arrangement where you say, I'm going to pay you $10,000 to lobby on this topic, but if you succeed in getting this bill passed, I'm going to give you an extra 50,000. Right? That's a contingency. That is illegal, and the reason is they don't want financial incentives in the system where, say you were going to give me $50,000, I could go a legislator and say, look, these guys are going to give me 50 grand if I get this passed. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Please get it passed and I'll split it with you. Right. That's why that rule exists. It's to prevent that kind of corruption from taking place in the halls of the Capitol. If you are involved, you can scroll down again. If you're involved at the local level, that kind of lobbying is also reported. There's a typo in this document. The cap for municipalities is actually 5,000, not 50,000. You got to drop a zero there. So that's a pretty small town. So basically, almost any municipality that if you are advocating for things like this, again, money, a rule change, a local ordinance, any kind of rules locally that involve your agency, if you are engaging at a municipal level, including New York City, you have to report that information. The municipal stuff that's not New York City is reported through the state commission. New York City has its own reporting system that's done through the city clerk's office. So if you did lobbying in New York City, you would register both with the state of New York and with the city clerk's office to report what you're doing. All right. I included a link at the end of this. This is from the National Council of Nonprofits. It's sort of a guide to advocacy in general. It gives you a lot of the same stuff that we just went over and some other things. And we'll have some other information on the federal government and being involved at the federal level, which I'm not going to cover today. That's really a summation of the federal 501c3 rules around your lobbying and how the lobby commission works, that process for reporting. Megan, if you want, I'll take questions from people. And I think everybody got this document emailed to them, so you should have this document.
Yes. Yep, exactly. And I'm I don't see any questions in the chat this moment. Although I will keep an eye. Oh, here's a question. Just checking for my understanding, if you say that an activity is considered exempt by the federal government, i.e. self-defense, do you still need to do a 501H, or does that mean there is no requirement?
They're exempt if you make your 501H election, right? So that's part of the rules. This is why you make a 501H election, right? Again, talk to your lawyer, talk to your accountant. Every nonprofit should make a 501H election if you involve in any kind of lobbying at all, because it's just a very simple rule to follow, and those exemptions attach that H rule.
And that 501H form itself, I think you said this, Vince, but it's very short. It's a signature, it's a checkbox, and then that's done.
Filling out what your agency is, and you just check a box saying, I elect to be covered by 501H for the purposes of advocacy.
Okay, so in their case, yeah, make sure you do that. Okay. I see. Next question. What about religious organizations? Any special issues?
Nope. Catholic Church lobbies quite a bit, often against me. I mean, you name the denomination. Yes, they lobby like anybody else. No prohibitions.
And I will stay on the state lobbying to fill out the paperwork, because we do that at NYCON, and we do that twice a year report, like Vince mentioned. And I would say up front that the most difficult part of it is just navigating the portal.
Yeah, it's not that complicated. Once you've done it, it's pretty it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
But the website is not the greatest, and there's lots of layers to it. So you have to learn which buttons to hit and be careful not to miss certain things. But once you do it a few times, it's very easy. There's also people that run a business that you can pay them to do it for you. It's really kind of a waste of money if you ask me, but there are people that will actually file it for you if you want them to. And for my clients, I basically give them everything. You just have to follow through it, check the boxes, put the right words in, and submit it. And I think there's a $50 fee, correct, Megan? You have to
Yes. Yep. Twice a year. Yep. $50 fee. And but yeah, exactly. The amount of information you're putting in there is very, very little.
It'll draw things from my filings. I file every 2 months. And then that stuff, it gets reported biannually by clients. But most, like all the bills and everything that I work on or any action they took, will automatically populate for you into the form.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so if you've never done that form before, there's a little work the first time, but then really it's, so much in the system. If you have questions, I would say reach out to us. Twice a year, I reorient myself to that portal so we can fill it out. Okay. Other questions? If not, I will turn to some NYCON work. Okay. All right. So if you think of anything, please put it in the chat. But so I want to just give you an update on a couple advocacy things that NYCON is working on at the state and federal level. For those of you who've been members for NYCON for a while, we've always done advocacy, but we've definitely upped our work, particularly the last few years, and certainly this year with the change in the federal administrations, we're doing a lot more. But and actually, I'm going to put in the chat in the email that went out this morning. There was links to lots of different resources, but I'm going to put that right here in the chat as well, so you have it handy. Oh, of course they didn't link. Try one more time, and if it doesn't link, I will ask Sue if she can put the links in the chat. Oh, still didn't work. All right, so yeah, Sue, if you wouldn't mind putting those links in the chat so they actually link. It's not just
Yep,
a list
sure
of
thing.
links. Thanks, Sue. Okay. So the first one is the State of the Sector report. So we started doing this 3 years ago, free to all on our website under our advocacy tab. Definitely encourage everyone to pull that if it's helpful with your advocacy efforts. It has tons of data in there about the impact of our sector. This is something we send every year to every New York State legislator, and then we also use it ourselves in advocacy work, but definitely encourage you to check that out. This year, our focus on the New York State side has been around a bill to help with, thanks, Sue, to help with New York State contracts. So where nonprofits have contracts with New York State to deliver different programs and services. And so we did, working as part of a coalition, we did draft a bill, and we were very excited and grateful for Assemblymember Paulin and Senator Mayer for sponsoring that bill. And as of last week, it passed both houses unanimously. So now it's off to the governor and sitting on her desk to review, hopefully sign into law. Not assured, which in a second I'll get to that. But a couple highlights. And thank you, Sue. I see she's putting in the chat there. That's the bill. If you want to read the full bill, it's a lot. So let me just give you a few highlights, and know that all the changes we proposed were directly related to what we've heard from nonprofits, and really those big problems that have been around for, frankly, decades. Sue just put in that last link is to a white paper we did with the coalition outlining some of those challenges and how this bill could help. But so just a few highlights that are in there. One of the big ones is that it would require automatic advances on all New York State contracts within 30 days of contract execution. So if you're a nonprofit, you have a contract with New York State, you would not have to wait months, even over a year, to get that first payment. You would automatically get funding upfront to help you pay for salary, benefits, all those costs, right, that start on day one. Another thing that's in this bill is New York State is required, if their payments are late to nonprofits for services, the state does have to pay interest, but it's very, very low, like 1 or 2%. So this bill would require that the state has to pay at the prime interest rate. Because our thought is, as nonprofits, if we have to go get a credit line because the state is late in paying us, we should be getting interest from New York State that pays for that credit line, what we're having to pay to a bank for that credit line. So really kind of common sense, we thought, on our perspective, nonprofits' perspective. Another example is the bill would require an indirect cost rate of at least 15% being allowed in all grants with New York State across all agencies. Now, some agencies do that, but also there's agencies who will not allow you to put indirect costs in grants. So here we're saying it must be at least 15%. Agency can go higher, absolutely, but at least 15% across the board in all those contracts. So, and again, that's just a few. There's like 18 different changes in this bill. I definitely invite you to check it out. So how you can help though, because again, it's definitely not assured that the governor will sign it, and she could absolutely veto it. So we will be working with our coalition to put out social media messages, a sign-on letter. The group actually is meeting tomorrow, so I anticipate next week I'll be back out with that information. So how all of you can get involved to help with that and hopefully persuade the governor to sign that into law. So more coming on that. Let me switch gears now to federal. As you know, there's a lot going on at the federal level. We are continuing to work with the National Council of Nonprofits. I've never been so grateful that NYCON is a member of NCN, so we've been working very closely with them, and we'll continue as things happen. Obviously, there's a lot going on at the federal level, but the one thing I wanted to just touch on quickly is the tax bill that's being negotiated right now. It's in the Senate, otherwise known as the One Big Beautiful Act. Although I certainly disagree with that title because of the impact on nonprofits. But so if you've seen the headlines, there's a lot going on right now. They may actually be voting on that, passing it today, tomorrow. Their goal is to have it enacted by July 4th. Thanks to advocacy on the part of, I'm sure you have been involved, certainly nonprofits across New York State, even nationally. Thanks to that, some of the most devastating proposals at the beginning have been taken out. So that's good. There's actually a couple of things that are actually good for us that are beneficial for nonprofits in terms of like higher federal tax deductions for individuals giving to charity. So that's good. There are certainly, though, things in there that are not so great. One kind of smaller one, which is a Sue put in the link there, that last link. And we are asking nonprofits to contact their members of Congress. And if you follow that link, it'll take you, I think, 30 seconds. It's very quick. It's a templated email that will go right to your member of Congress, encouraging them on some of the incentives and disincentives around charitable giving that are still in that bill. So if you want to check that out, please do. Obviously, though, the bigger thing, right, we've been all hearing about is the Medicaid and SNAP cuts, which could impact some of us as nonprofits directly, and then also certainly the communities that we serve. And we see the need going up, as a result of that. The advice we're being given from NCN at this point is those cuts are going to go through. There's a question on how big those cuts will be, but at this point, it's largely in the Senate and amongst the Republicans to decide where they're going. So certainly, encourage you if you want to reach out to members of Congress to encourage them to protect those funds. Um, uh, but again, we are kind of at the end here, so we'll see how things fall out. Even once this tax bill goes through, obviously we know there's a lot of other things in play at the federal level impacting nonprofits. And one of the things we're doing, working closely with NCN, is continuing to look ahead and what we can be doing and kind of the big picture. And one thing we've been working with them on is there is a lot of miscommunication and misinformation in the public among elected officials about what nonprofits do, our impact, who we are, how we operate, and just a lot of misinformation. So one thing you can do to help, thank you, Sue, that last link, she just popped in there, is NCN set up a form on their website early in the process to ask for nonprofits to talk about what is the positive impact they're making in their communities. Because that is one piece that just a lot of people just don't know, all the really wonderful things you're all doing. So if you can take a minute, fill that out, appreciate it. That's very helpful. No, too, we are working with NCN on marketing. Otherwise, there will be some widespread marketing around our sector. We've been working with them, pulling members in different subsectors to help with media stories and things of that nature, just as one example to help with this marketing effort as well. So we'll continue that. Obviously, far more to come, lots of things going on in the background to help nonprofits as we go forward. Certainly lots of court cases still going on as well, more to come there, I'm sure as well. But those, again, are a couple quick efforts you can help with. For members in the room, I'd say, we will continue to send out those advocacy emails with state and federal updates, including how you can help, trying to keep it as streamlined and as quick as possible, because I know everyone's really busy and it's overwhelming. But we will continue to do those updates. We sent out one early this week. I anticipate definitely in the next week or two, we will have another one coming out. And also social media, as we have these sign-on letters and things, you will see that, LinkedIn accounts. I have a LinkedIn account, or NYCON does as well as other social media accounts for NYCON. Keep an eye on those. Okay, so that's all I had for the updates on the NYCON side. Any questions from the audience? We do have time if anyone has any questions. Vince or myself? And one thing I do want to say is, oh yeah, and thank you to all of you. And I do want to say too, I've had a lot of people lately ask me to come talk about the state of the sector and about things, and I get it. It's overwhelming. There's a lot going on, and I don't know about you, but how much time I spend reading media. I'm cutting, trying to be succinct and then move away and get my mind on something else. It's a lot. It's overwhelming. I get it. But we'll continue to do on our end everything we can to keep it as streamlined as possible for you. And know too that, strength in numbers. It's not just nonprofits in our state and NYCON here. It's also state nonprofit associations all across this country, working through the National Council and with other national groups as well to do everything we can. So no, we've got your back, and we need your help on these pieces as they come up, and we'll ask for that. But no, too, there's a lot of people working to help us. Okay. All right. So not seeing any other questions. I think we will end there. So again, reminder, so this recording will be emailed out to all of you. Will be put in the member dashboard. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And I hope you have a nice holiday and a nice weekend coming up. Thanks, everyone.
Everybody.